have the Ayatollah of fantasy rock and roll with us today, Adam Rank. How you doing, Rank?
They look great in person, and I just can't wait to next year where we can pack it full of 25,000.
Hey, Bob, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. I didn't know it was Ball Guys Day. It was being ranked. I mean, how do you lose?
This is the Dynasty Vipers ViperCast.
Welcome to Behind the Grind, and joining me as always, we got Major Caldwell and Tera Roberts, and we are about to establish the run once again with this former two-time FSWA winner and co-founder at Establish the Run, Adam Levitan. How you doing?
Nice sound effect. Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
This is the only show where I will butcher everyone's name 2 or 3 times, and I don't know if anyone ever corrects me when I go with it. They just kind of let me go on, and hopefully I got your name pronounced properly, but I don't know half the time. Let's be honest.
You got it. No, you're good.
Well, that's good. That makes me feel much better about myself. I say Major's name all the time wrong, too, so don't feel bad.
And you shouldn't, because it's just like a normal, like, Army thing.
I call you all kinds of things when you're not around. It's not the same as what I call you. Yeah, so
copy that.
Hey, on this show, we like to keep it loose, and we love to get to know our analysts. And we want to give everyone listening in right now, whether it's on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, whatever that podcasting platform may be, an inside look at one of their favorite analysts right now in the Twitter sphere. And that's Adam here. And we got to start off with the tough questions, because these are only tough questions from here on out. So kicking us off, if you were going to introduce yourself at the Fantasy Football Expo in Canton, Ohio, or if you were coming in to close a game in the 9th inning, or you had the fireworks going, you're coming down to the ring in the WWE, what is that song that is going to accompany you down the walkway?
Oh, man. I am a big Grateful Dead fan. I am a big Allman Brothers fan. I think I would probably go with Box of Rain. Grateful Dead is probably one of my favorite songs, or maybe Friend of the Devil, and more people would probably know Friend of the Devil, I think. So maybe I'd go with that. I don't think it would get anybody hyped, but maybe it would get them chill at least. You know what I mean? Nobody would be too angry.
So for people like Major who's never heard that song, Friend of the Devil, there, can you get us sing a few words there for us?
I lit up from Reno. I was trailed by 20 pounds, and then it keeps going for a while. Yeah, you got it.
Hey, you know what? Sorry, Major. I just was trying to get some lyrics out of him here. That's all I was going for on that one.
Yeah.
So we know what that song is that's going to bring you down to the ring, but we kind of got to know, what are you going to listen to by yourself in the locker room that you don't want anyone else to know about? What's that guilty pleasure song you have?
Probably Counting Crows. I don't know. You guys, Counting Crows, like Long December, I would say, or maybe like Smashing Pumpkins, 1979. I mean, I grew up in the 90s, so this was kind of a grunge type era, and so yeah, I would say probably one of those.
You look more like a Taylor Swift type of guilty pleasure. No, but did you play any sports as a youth?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's all I did. I feel like, I got 2 young kids now, and they play a ton of sports, but there's just so many more distractions. When I was growing up, we didn't have hardly any distractions. All we did was play sports. So yeah, I played everything. By the time I was 13 or so, I pretty much only played basketball. But before that, I played, almost every sport. So yeah, I mean, and I still love to play every sport. I still play in tons of men's leagues and stuff like that, and do bets and crazy props and stuff like that. So yeah, it's great.
Can you talk a little bit about how that like developed you as a youth, and then also give us some of your favorite teams and players that you enjoyed when you was a kid?
Yeah, I would say my favorite team was it was a Bullets team. Obviously, it became the Wizards after, but there was a Bullets team that played Michael Jordan and the Bulls in the first round of the playoffs, and they had Chris Webber, Juwan Howard, Rod Strickland, Mitch Richmond. I think Gugliotta was probably on that team. And yeah, I really cared back then about Washington sports. I grew up in Virginia, and I actually cared. I mean, now it would be impossible for me to care less about which team wins, but back then I really did care, for sure. And yeah, I just think playing sports in general is like so good for kids, learn how to take a loss, learn how to win with class, learn how to be part of a team, and really just like learn how to play hard. I mean, I was never the biggest or the most athletic, but I was always going to play harder, I thought, than everyone else. So yeah, I think playing sports when you're a kid is just like an absolute no-brainer.
Yeah, I think the best part of the whole thing you just said is like learning how to lose. Like that is something that people do not know how to do today, and that's why we have all these crazies walking around.
No, no, I think so for sure, and especially like if people are out there gambling and stuff, like understanding like how to lose too is really important, because trust me, you're going to lose all the time, even if you're a winner in the long run.
Absolutely.
Now, I know when a lot of us, we start getting up there in age, whether you played basketball or football or hockey, whatever that sport as a kid growing up, we kind of transition away from that and move into maybe golf, for example. So I kind of want to ask you, do you make a habit of leaving your shirts at other people's houses? And what is your opinion on golf shirt etiquette?
Yeah, you saw that clip that we put out about the shirt situation. Yeah, I'm not much of a golfer. I think if I get 5 free hours to myself now, and like I said, we have the company and I have 2 young kids. If I get 5 free hours to myself, first of all, there's no such thing. I never have 5 free hours to myself.
Right.
If I did, the last thing I would ever wanted to is go out there for 5 hours and get frustrated and get dressed up in a collared shirt and hit the ball in the water and get annoyed. I think I'd be trying to relax a little bit more. So yeah, I'm not much of a golfer now. Maybe when I can no longer play actual sports like basketball or tennis or soccer or whatever, then maybe I'll start playing some golf with the old men and stuff like that. But right now, it's a pass for me for sure, especially with the shirt thing. I mean, it's ridiculous.
What's with the shirt thing? A collar? What's the significance of having to wear a collar on the golf course?
It's not. It's like it's a way to divide people thing. It's like a rich person thing. They want you to look super nice and to have the honor to come to the place and hit the ball with a stick into a hole. You got to wear a collared shirt. I mean, it's just it's not a good thing for society, really. I don't think so.
I like how this guy thinks.
Yeah.
Yes. Let's dive a little further back into you and tell us about big question. Tell us about a decision that changed the trajectory of your life.
Oh yeah. I was working at Roto World. I started at Roto World as just like an hourly news blurber. And I didn't get a full-time job for a while. And, when you're making, I think I was making like $9 an hour or so. And I was playing poker at the time. So money wasn't a huge issue, but I was just like, man, like how much longer can I really do this? And so I took the GMAT, which for those who don't know is the exam to get into business school. And I thought, hey, I'll just go gamble on stocks instead of going to gamble on players, and so I took the GMAT. I actually took classes to try to do well on the GMAT, and I did, and I started filling out applications, and then it was just a decision that hit me when Greg Rosenthal, who was the boss at the time, was like, hey, you just got to stick it out and get a full-time job and we'll figure something out. And I was just like, man, I don't know, but I decided to stick with it just for a little bit longer before going to business school, and then it ended up working out because a couple people left Roto World and I got a full-time job, and yeah, we can get into all that later if you want, but yeah, that was a decision. There's always like some fork in the road where you feel like you have to do something for money, or you can do something just for life that you want to do, and I was just trying to hold out as long as possible before I did something strictly for money, like go bet on stocks, and don't let anyone fool you, by the way. These Wall Street guys are just literally gambling on stocks, just like we're gambling on players. So yeah, same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. How long you been in the industry?
I started at Roto World. Well, God, I mean, my first job out of college, it wasn't fantasy, but I was covering European soccer for a place called the Sports Network, and that was in 2004. And this was in Philadelphia, or suburb of Philadelphia, and we would cover, I use that term loosely, European soccer from the comfort of our desk in Philadelphia. And so I got fired / laid off from there quickly, but that was in 2004. And then I started working at newspaper up in Doylestown, still not doing fantasy. And then the first time I did anything fantasy related was probably like 2006. There was a newspaper in New York, Philadelphia, and Boston, a free daily called Metro. And I was, good friends with Jordan Ronan, who covers the Giants now for ESPN, but I knew him from the Sports Network, the first job. He got the editor's job at Metro, sports editor job at Metro, and he let me write a fantasy column once a week there. And so that was the first time I wrote about fantasy, was probably for Metro in 05, 06, something like that.
Well, what are some of the biggest changes you've seen from then to now?
Oh, man, I mean, back then you couldn't even figure out like who was hurt and who was playing and who was starting. Like that was really hard. I used to wake up, I started Roto World in 2007 or so. There was hardly any Twitter. There was hardly any information. I would literally wake up and try to read a newspaper from every team just to try to get like something, like some speculation on if some guy's going to play or if somebody's hurt or when somebody will be back or who's starting. The amount of information and the way the NFL is covered now has gone completely insane. Every team has 5 beat reporters. Everybody's like falling all over themselves to tweet who's hurt faster, to the point where it's just like ridiculously and it doesn't matter. So to me, that's the biggest change from the industry perspective, fantasy football industry perspective. Everything changed when DFS came on the scene. And I'm sure we can talk about that if you guys want, but there wasn't a ton of money in fantasy at all for players, for people working in it, for the industry. I mean, there was not a ton of money at all. And then DFS hit and there was all the money in the world. And so that was like the biggest change in the industry for sure.
Can you please explain what a newspaper is to Tara? She's really young. I don't think she knows what a newspaper is.
I have a journalism background, like a journalism minor in college.
I mean, that's like blogs. That's like blogs. That's not newspapers. Relax.
But we talked about the biggest difference when you started to where we are now. But what's the biggest difference in yourself from when you started to now?
Yeah, good question. I think from kind of the way that I always did it, did content for fantasy is like I'm playing as hard as I can. I'm playing as big as I possibly can, and I just share whatever I find with other people. Like there's no ulterior motive. There's no gaming. It's just literally like I'm playing super hard. I'm trying extremely hard, and I'm just going to share what I find with everybody else. And so that really hasn't changed a ton in my style of kind of content. Now, I think I've started to think about things over the last, 3-4 years from a more kind of data and mathematical perspective, especially for DFS and stuff like that. But yeah, the amount of information has changed everything, and the way I think you think about football has to change with the information as well.
Kind of going back to that point at which you said you're going to stick it out with fantasy football. You're going to, you could go the NBA route, but you're going to stick it out. Like at what point after that did you realize that it was a reality that you could have a career? What was that moment that you realized that this was going to be a career for you?
Yeah. So when I first started at Roto World, I mean, nobody had full-time jobs. It was like Matthew Berry, Greg Rosenthal, Evan, I guess, had just gotten a full-time job at Roto World, Chris Wessling, and maybe like one other person that I'm probably not remembering. But there were like no full-time jobs. So when I got a full-time job, I was like, oh my God, like, I can make $50K a year, which I thought was a lot at the time. And I can make $50K a year and talk about fantasy football forever. And I'll just keep playing poker, and that's never going to dry up. I was an idiot. I thought that like, poker would be good for me forever. And that would just be it. And so, yeah, at that point I was like, man, I could actually sustain this. As time kind of went on, I realized that 50K is not enough to like have a family, have kids. It's just not. Well, I guess it depends where you live, but I was living in Philadelphia at the time. It's just not. And so I was like, man, I got to figure something out on top of this too. And also like the hours were a lot. Playing poker is a really time intensive type of endeavor for sure. And so, yeah, I think when I really knew that it was going to be like something I could do forever was in 2015 when I left Roto World and I did the deal with DraftKings. And I did a deal with Fantasy Labs as well, which you guys might not remember or ever hear of. But yeah, and so that was when I knew it was like real money and there was real ceiling and there was like real opportunity to really make a lot, both playing it and kind of talking about this stuff.
Did you think that it was going to blow up the way that it did?
Oh,
did you see it coming, or was it
So,
just like this big surprise?
I lived through the poker boom. You know, I started playing poker in 2002, 2003, and you know, Chris Moneymaker won in 2005, I think, or 2004, something like that. And that's when the boom ignited. So I lived through like the first boom of people from my generation, like becoming absolutely obsessed and enamored with like peer-to-peer gambling, essentially. You know, like instead of blackjack or roulette, which is like the stupidest things in the entire world. Would never even like, it makes me sick to even like think about someone playing that stuff. Peer to peer, I'm going to play against you and I can beat you because I'm going to work harder, or I'm smarter, I understand things better, or whatever. Like for my generation, like that was like the big appeal. And so with poker kind of slowly dying off after Black Friday and DFS, they being kind of really similar in the way it's structured with tournaments and cash games and peer-to-peer, I just had a really good feeling that like this was going to be absolutely massive. So yeah, I did kind of see it coming when I first heard about DFS. Like, A, I can't believe this is legal. B, now that I know that it is legal, like it's going to be really huge.
So going to this poker thing here before I get this is unscripted here right now. I see poker all the time on the sports channels, right? It's on Sportsnet, it's on this. It took me a while to come across this cheerleading as a sport. I finally gave in and said, you know what? That's physically demanding. I couldn't do that. Is poker a sport?
No.
That's what I need to know.
No. It's a game. I wouldn't even consider bowling or you know, pool. Yeah, no, it's a game. You know, it's not a sport. I don't know who would call poker a sport. I don't think anyone would really call poker a sport, would they?
Well, I can't imagine any like 7, 8-year-old kid going, my dream is to hit the river at the World Series of Poker. I mean, we've heard about scoring the game-winning goal in the Stanley Cup in Game 7, hitting that home run, but hitting that river, that's something I haven't heard from any of our youth.
Well, yeah. You know, I think there are people out there who say that. You haven't encountered enough degenerate youths yet, I guess, is the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say, you're right. I mean, there was a really good run. Like I remember there was like Poker After Dark, and I used to really look forward to watching those guys every single night. It was really weird how it kind of picked up and boomed.
Oh yeah. I mean, the TV stuff was big time, and you know, being able to see the whole cards changed everything. I mean, yeah, it was just like a perfect storm of a boom, kind of like, you know, perfect storm of DFS and too. So yeah, I mean, it was really, really popular for a while. For people who weren't around in like 05, 06, 07, poker was like, you could not escape it. I mean, it was everywhere.
It was. I mean, I can't imagine what that would be like too. If you were doing the fantasy football thing and then doing the poker thing, when you would find time to kind of recharge, because we know the grind during the regular season, it can be something. It can take its toll on the best of us. How do you find time to recharge during the off season? And I use the term off season very loosely here. Where do you find time to go? You mentioned 2 kids. What do you kind of do to recharge? Where's that work-life balance come into effect?
Yeah, I assume you're asking about now, right? Not back then, because back then it was much easier. You know, I didn't have any kids. I mean, life was, you know, it was just so easy. You know, I
do your words wisely now.
Yeah, did whatever I wanted. No, for sure. And now I think it's much harder, and you know, I try to be intentional with it. You know, I try to block off every morning from you know, roughly 7:30 to 9:30 a.m. I meet a bunch of guys at the gym. We play basketball. You know, we go in the hot tub. We go in a sauna, relax. I try to block off that part in the morning in the off season. You know, from a business perspective, the best time to acquire customers, to reach people, is in the summer. That's when they're getting ready for their draft. Like, you know, once the season starts, like, you know, it's over. You know, everybody's already kind of attached themselves to someone if they're looking for help or advice. So the summer is actually kind of the most intense time. I find the grind of the regular season actually somewhat more relaxing. Like, you get into a routine where you know every day what you're going to do, what's going to happen in the NFL. There's injury report this day. Schefter bombs are coming this way. The salaries on DraftKings come out that day. It's just kind of like a good routine to be in. So I find that more relaxing. I would say summer is actually kind of stressful. And so the most dead time is really like playoffs, after the Super Bowl, stuff like that. And yeah, in terms of recharging, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I like to just be outside. I mean, I moved to Colorado last year, in part just because like I knew that being outside correlated so much to my happiness. And in Philly, like nobody really wants to be outside. The weather is so awful all seasons pretty much. And there's not a lot to really do outside in the city and out here in Colorado. I mean, all everybody wants to do is just be outside 24/7. And so, I think being intentional with it and understanding what makes you happy and being outside is for sure it for me.
Yeah, so this next question is like one of my favorites that we ask on this show. We learned so much about you already. You know, you like 90s like moody music. You're a father. You know what I mean, like poker. You have great views on golf and society. What's on your YouTube playlist?
Oh,
Hang on,
man.
Major. Before he answers that question, I just want to point out right now that you are wearing a collared top and at least 2 buttons there.
Yeah,
on
he's
your
ready for
shirt.
the golf
I'm
course.
usually-
Usually up to the neck too, but it's too hot in my room right now. I don't know.
They would actually welcome him at the golf course, not me, but yeah.
Will they?
Yeah.
Oh, will they though?
Yeah, YouTube.
man.
I actually watch a ton of YouTube, and I grew up listening and watching Howard Stern probably every night from I was like 11 or 12. And they had the E Show when I was growing up on the E channel, and I would watch it. It was on from 11 to 11:30, and then there'd be another one from 11:30 to 12, and I would just stay up and watch it. I would listen when I was driving to school. Once I had my own car, I would listen to Stern all the time, and like the narrative around Stern is that like he's so vile and outrageous and ridiculous. For people that actually listen, he's like a dad and a good guy who happens to like think sick things are funny, and I also think sick things are funny. You know what I mean? And so and so now I don't really listen that much to New Stern. I don't like it as much, but on YouTube people put up some amazing clips from like 1998. They'll have like the half-hour E Show and stuff like that. And so almost every night now I fall asleep to listening to Stern through what people put up on YouTube. It's definitely one of my favorite things for sure.
Nice.
So tell us something about yourself that most people don't realize about you.
Yeah, most people, I do this solo pod where I don't talk about football really much at all. I really just answer questions from people about my life or my take and stuff like that. And so I think like the biggest reason that it's been successful is like I just hold nothing back. Like, I absolutely tell the truth and am honest with everyone when they ask me a question about life or anything else. And so I don't think there's anything that people really don't know about me at all. I mean, I answer anybody's question about anything pretty much. So yeah, I can't really think of anything that people don't know about me. I know that sounds crazy, but yeah, I can't think of anything.
If I'm looking for advice, who should I ask? You or Jerry?
Dun dun dun.
Yeah, people probably don't know Jerry. I mean, God, I mean, Jerry's gonna be 8 now. It's my dog. We got Jerry before we had kids, and Jerry was like, the way I felt about this dog was like, I mean, I can't even like describe the way I felt about this dog. It's so crazy. I used to, I wrote a book or an ebook or whatever where the title is Skin to Fur, because I used to like take my clothes off or at least my shirt and press Jerry's bare fur against the fur on my chest, and we would do Skin to Fur together, and people like that a lot. And so yeah, Jerry used to be on all the podcasts. She would sit behind me and she would bark a lot, and people would say that if we were talking about Davante Adams, when Jerry barked, it would mean that Davante Adams was gonna have a good game and stuff like that. And so yeah, it was fun doing the bits with Jerry. She's gotten older, and there's nowhere in this new room for her to sit, so she's not down here, but yeah, she's doing well.
Nice. Have you ever had an interview that kind of changed your views on how someone, I guess, comes across? Like you went to an interview thinking that someone was a jerk and they end up being like actually a pretty cool person, or vice versa?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, honestly, like
Hint, wink, wink.
It's talking about you, Matt.
In today's society, like the media wants to paint everything like so black and white, and to me, like everything is so nuanced. And so even if you think somebody's take on some political thing is completely absurd, like for most people, I mean, there's definitely some certain psychopaths out there. For most people, if you actually like sit down and listen to them, they're typically like people who mean well, who like have different intentions, or it's more nuanced than you think, or their history is different than what you think. And so, yeah, I love listening to interviews. I pretty much on TV only watch, documentaries or nonfiction. I can't really face like a lot of the binge watching of, these stupid like Game of Thrones and crap like that. Like I can't face that stuff. I need the nonfiction. And so, yeah, I think what you said makes sense. I want to hear interviews. I don't know if you're referring to interviews with me personally, myself, but
Yeah, we can go either or.
yeah. I think in general, like just hearing people's thoughts are for sure super interesting to me, and especially if like someone that I disagree with, like that's like the most important, to actually not just see the headline on Twitter or on some newspaper or something, actually go deeper into it and kind of see what they think. And like I got into that this past week, with the thread stuff on Twitter. I don't know how big you guys are on Twitter, if you've been following this whole thread saga. I did like 12 minutes on threads because, people are out there just dunking on all the thread boys, and I thought it was worth a more nuanced conversation. And so I did like 12 minutes on threads, which sounds, ridiculous, but I thought it was important because so many people are out there just like going nuts about threads on Twitter and trying to dunk on people. And so, yeah, anything to give stuff more context, I'm up for listening.
People don't understand how hard it is to drop a 12 tweet thread on anything. That's like 240 characters. That's almost as much as an article that I write.
I actually did hear that conversation on the threads, and you made some pretty good points around that. As fantasy analysts, there are certain things that we might have to do to grow, and I think maybe we'll talk about that in a second. But before we jump into that, so we know about you and the potential of doing stocks, and then we know about the potential of going down, we know about the potential of doing stocks and MBA. And if those things didn't happen, if fantasy football didn't happen, tell us one more thing that you might be doing right now if there were no fantasy football.
Oh, Doggie Daycare. I was actually like looking into opening a doggy daycare where I would just like either in my house or have a store, and people who had to go to work and they didn't want their dog to be home all day, they'd bring their dog to my place, and I'd hang out with the dogs all day, and they'd pay me. I mean, I might still do that. I'm ready to retire and open a doggy daycare store right now. So yeah, something with dogs for sure. The doggy daycare idea was maybe not a great one, but yeah, something with dogs.
I love that.
Would this work out like Patreon? Would there be like a skin to fur tier, and would Jerry be okay with this?
Yeah, I'm gonna end up in jail with the skin to fur tier.
Right. Just random dogs like, get over here.
So in our last segment there on the ViperCast, presented by the Fantasy Points Media Group, we kind of talked about some of these headlines. And one of the things I do is I like to go back on Twitter, maybe not threads necessarily, but maybe some old tweets. And you kind of mentioned you'd be doing a doggy daycare. So what you had so much promise growing up, doctor, lawyer, who knows? 25 years later, it's Vasectomy Advocate. By the way, May 10th, vasectomy searches went up 99%.
Yeah. Where are you getting these stats
Where
from?
were you going with this on the Vasectomy Advocate?
Yeah, so I talk a lot about sex stuff and kid stuff on the podcast, and so people were like, I made the decision to get a vasectomy, and like I like poured over this decision for like 4 years. Like I was like trying to work up the courage to do it. I did like so much research, and I talked about it on all the podcasts, so everybody who listened knew that this was happening. And so there was a lot of vasectomy talk leading up to it on Twitter, and everybody was reaching out to me, and so I did. The guys from MGM like reached out and were like, "Hey, do you want to do our podcast?" I said, okay. I do them all the time, and then they tweeted out a clip, and when they tweeted out the clip, they didn't say like establish the runs, Adam Levitan. They didn't say Fantasy Football, Adam Levitan. It said Vasectomy Advocate Adam Levitan joined us on the podcast this week. And MGM has like 1 million followers, something like that. So all these people were like, "Oh, they didn't know the joke." They were just like, "Oh yeah, he's a vasectomy advocate." And so I was like, "Yeah, I did have so much promise. I mean, ask my parents, but in the end, it was just vasectomy expert. That's on the tombstone."
You need to make some little business cards and just like that should be like your icebreaker.
Well, because of fantasy football, this is what we've learned about you. Now, what has fantasy football taught you about yourself?
Yeah, good question. The whole and I talked about this a lot in the book, was kind of the intro that life is just a series of decisions in which we take the information we have and try to make the best one. And that's really all we can do. And that's the same thing as fantasy football, and the same thing as poker. It's a game of incomplete information. We have no idea how many carries Austin Eckler is going to get versus Isaiah Spiller in week 1, but we can take the information we have, Spiller's metrics, the coaching staff's comments on Spiller, how they were using the preseason, Eckler's history. And so we have that information. We can make the best decision that we can, whether we want to play Eckler at, 8,600 on DraftKings or not. It's the same thing in life, if I go look at the milk and the milk says that it expired 2 days ago, well, I have that information. What I don't know is if that milk is going to kill me if I drink it, or if I'm going to feel sick, or if it's going to be totally fine, right? So everything is a game of incomplete information. So I'm just trying to make the best decision I can every single time, over and over and over and over again when I'm gambling or playing fantasy football or whatever. And the same thing in life, every time. So you don't realize it, but you're faced with hundreds of decisions every single day. Some are important, some won't matter at all, but I'm just always trying to make the right one. And it's honestly maybe not the best way to live, because I think of things through an EV perspective. And so, my calculus is should I take the 15 minutes to go pick up this food, or should I order delivery and work on something else? And it's actually exhausting to constantly be calculating the EV of every little life decision. But I think that's kind of the way that I would look at it. And for sure, anytime you're playing fantasy seriously, that's kind of a good lesson for life too. So hopefully that makes sense.
Quick follow up on the milk. So if the expiration date matches today's date, do you drink it?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you got a buffer.
Yeah. My thought is that the milk company is extremely incentivized to not kill you, right? So they give you a buffer, just like your gas light goes on when you have 30 or 40 miles left, because they don't want you to actually run out right then. Like Matt said, they give you a buffer. So yeah, I'm usually okay going. I'll smell it, but I'll usually go a couple days past.
You talked earlier about Roto World and your journey from there. What are some of the relationships that have really helped you along the way?
Oh man, I mean, I emailed Greg Rosenthal a cold email that I don't even know if they were hiring or what, and he didn't write back for I don't know, 6 months. And then just out of the stone blue one day, I got an email from him being like, "Hey, we don't have any room for articles, but you can do some news blurbs for us, like I said, for $8 an hour." And I said, sure. And he was, so good to me and gave me a chance. And so I still love talking to Greg when I can now. Working with Evan, Evan is the best, smartest fantasy football person I've ever met. He's I can't even describe it, like a savant of fantasy football. And so getting to meet him at Roto World, and then us starting the company together, completely changed my life 100 times over. Completely changed everything. And if he hadn't been willing to do it with me, I probably wouldn't have done established the run. So yeah, those early days relationships for sure. And Jordan too. I mean, I met Jordan. Before I got fired at Sports Network, I was only there 3 months when I got to know him, and he got me a job part-time at a newspaper. And then he let me write the fantasy article for Metro. And I'm still close with him today. And so, that's just, that's it. It's there's like a fine line between like, I don't know what people call it, nepotism and like cronyism, which I think in general is bad, but also like, I knew these people and like they knew me and they knew like I would do a good job and I would work hard and everything. So I don't know. There's some fine line there that I'm always trying to navigate. I'm not sure exactly what's right there, but for sure, without those people, there's no way I'd be here for sure.
Dope. So give us some advice for those of us trying to make it in the industry today.
Yeah, it's hard, man. I mean, it was so much easier when I started. I was like probably one of the first people on all of Twitter talking about fantasy football exclusively. Like, I'm not exaggerating. Like, I was one of the first people like to sign up for Twitter probably in the first like 6 months, and I was probably one of the first people to like exclusively tweet about fantasy football. And like think about how big of a head start that is. Now, if I started and I had 0 followers and I just came in and started like giving my takes on fantasy football, nobody would care at all. Like 0, because it's like so oversaturated. The reason people care about what I tweet now is because like I have a lot of followers, I have the blue check mark, and it like snowballs, but if you're starting from 0, I don't think just like getting on Twitter and starting to tweet about general fantasy football stuff is like going to get you there. I think I always tell people niche stuff is where it's at. Cody Main, before we like right when we launched ETR, there was a Hall of Fame game, which is the first preseason game, and there's showdown on it on DraftKings. And so we got a cold email from this guy, Cody Main, just out of the blue. And he sent us like all this data, historical research, like graphs, trend lines about how to beat Hall of Fame game, preseason football, showdown. And I was like, man, like this is it. Like I don't need someone else to tell me that, they have X running back ranked 25th when everybody else has him 30th. Like nobody cares. But to go into a niche like preseason showdown, I mean, we didn't give him a job right away. We gave him work right away, and then once you get work, it can snowball from there. So I would encourage people to really, really find a niche. If you can show me that you have an edge in a showdown golf DFS, like I'm interested. If you send me an article that says you think that Darius Slayton's going to have a great year this year because XYZ, I'm likely not that interested because there's 1,000 other people that can and are doing that. It's just not going to separate it all. So I would say find a niche where you can win, find a niche where you can show people that you can make them money and show them value. And I think that's kind of the best way to do it now.
And one more piece of advice. Give us your best parenting advice.
Oh man. God. I did a whole thing on the solo pod, like it's been harder than I thought it was going to be, not from like from a freedom perspective. I love to travel and be outside and do whatever I want whenever I want. And now like for me to do anything takes like a full like army style logistics crusade,
To go to the restroom, huh?
Yeah,
I hear you.
So I would say that I mean, parenting, God, I'm the worst person to ask for advice. I'm like I'm the worst person to ask for advice, but yeah, I try not to wish the years away. My kids are 7 and 4 now, which I think is like almost the exact sweet spot for perfect age. Like I think like 5 and 8 might be before they turn into like asshole teenagers. And so yeah, I'm almost getting there. But those first few years, I was just like, God, this is awful. And don't let it, all these people are, oh, this is the best ever. I have this baby. And these people are all just doing what society thinks that they're saying what they think society wants them to say. When people ask me how it was having a newborn, I tell them that it was the worst experience of my life. Yeah.
Can you be my best friend, dude? Can you please be my best friend?
Sure,
please?
man. I'm looking for friends. Exactly. Yeah.
We'll after the show. I'll share some stories here with you on parenting.
Matt has all the
children in
stories.
general. Now, I want to get into some quick hitters here, real quick here before we head off here. Again, off the script a little bit here. Is having a really good mustache a niche? That's a no.
It's not. It's a niche in somebody might actually click on some YouTube thumbnail, I think, because it's unique. I actually think that might be a thing. Is it a niche in helping people win money? Of course not.
Fair enough.
He's all sad.
If
He's like,
if the purse is equal, what do you want to win? A high stakes fantasy football league or the World Series of Poker?
Oh man, I mean, there would be nothing like winning the World Series of Poker. And I don't even play that many tournaments. But winning the World Series of Poker, the World Series of Poker main event, I've been lucky to play it, 3 or 4 times, and it's an awesome experience. If anybody out there likes poker and you can afford it, it's an awesome experience, and I think that winning that is so different than winning a fantasy football. I know there's some big fantasy football leagues out there, but they're not televised. They're not as high stakes, and it's just different. In poker, you're exclusively relying on your own ability, and in fantasy football, I know you are too. But if you win, it's like, oh God, yeah, well, you won because Jamar Chase had 5 touchdowns or whatever. It's not necessarily all on you. So yeah, I think the World Series of Poker main event would be a pretty amazing experience to win.
All right, next question. To prove my Twitter stalking ability, what do you have a relation with Lepke Buchalter?
He was like the gangster in New York, right? How did you know that my mom's maiden name is Buchalter? I'm surprised. How did you dig that one up?
You know what? Google's a scary place, man. It takes you down a rabbit hole. You don't know where you're going or where you're coming out.
He's brave enough to go. He's brave enough to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. So my mom's maiden name is Buchalter, and I asked my family, like, are we related in any way to Lepke Buchalter? And for those that don't know, Lepke Buchalter was like part of like some mafia thing in New York, like murdering people, like Murder Inc., like all this crazy stuff. And everybody claimed that we're not related to him at all, but I still I'm not so sure. So I don't know the answer there if we're related to him at all.
Playing tennis, are you better with a tennis racket or a frying pan?
Yeah.
Oh man, that was a really bad loss. I've had some good bets, some good tennis bets that I've won since then, but the frying pan loss was, one of the worst, most humiliating experiences of my life. I actually had 3 match points, and that's probably still out there on YouTube or something, or Periscope somewhere, where I had 3 match points that I choked off against Steve, who was playing with the frying pan. But yeah, those tennis bets that I do. I mean, I think people think about tennis, they think about like 2 old ladies kind of like, tapping the ball back and forth. Tennis at a higher level is like incredibly physically demanding and intense. And there's nothing I like more than betting on myself in a tennis match. It's like literally the best thing. And I have a couple matches coming up. Actually, I'm actually training with a coach right now who I think has got me in a pretty good spot to hopefully win these matches. So yeah, I'll let you guys know.
And one final question. Gambling Olympics. Best event, worst event?
Gambling was fun. It was a good idea, man. I still think it's a good idea. We went out to Vegas and organized Gambling Olympics. And so we played a bunch of games like, we played poker, we played Yahtzee, we played Connect 4, we played rock, paper, scissors. What else did we do? We played Lot and Thinks. We played a lot of games. I would say the best game that we played at the Gambling Olympics was probably Connect 4, because there's some games like we couldn't have ping pong in the Gambling Olympics because like somebody's just like so clearly better than somebody else. They're dead, right? But in Connect 4, like it's like poker. You can be good at it. You can get good at it. You can practice. And I practiced a ton for the Connect 4 event before we did it. It was an awesome event. We had like a March Madness style bracket for it. That was an awesome one. I think rock, paper, scissors was a pretty good one too. I guess the worst event that we had there, I didn't really like the Yahtzee game that we played. I thought that was like kind of unfair to people who had a lot of Yahtzee background, but yeah, it's harder than it seems to do the Gambling Olympics because like it can't be straight luck, but it also can't be like all skill. Like if we do the Gambling Olympics and we make one of the games, I'll bet you on free throws. Well, that's not fair. I shoot 60% and Peter Jennings shoots like 90%. I'll never be able to beat him. And so that's not a good event at all. So it's harder than it seems, but I do still think that Gambling Olympics is a good idea.
That is a great answer to like the dumbest question ever. And the way how serious you took that, and like that was awesome.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, that was kind of high stakes too. I mean, we took it very seriously. So yeah, that was fun. Well, we'll probably do it again one day. We just need different events.
10% luck, 20% skill. No, I'm not even going to go there. With that said, hey, we have just wrapped up Behind the Grind with Adam Levitan here. Adam, when we talk about this, we talk about Establish the Run. We talk about this draft kit. I mean, kind of sell it one more time, that draft kit that's coming out there on Establish the Run.
I know I'm the worst salesman, but honestly, we have like the most incredible people working on this, and I think like some, people look at it from exclusive data angle. Some people are like exclusive tape grinders. I think we have the best of both, and I really think that makes a huge difference. And so, yeah, if you have a home league, if you're playing best ball, if you're playing like high stakes stuff like FFPC or NFFC, if you're betting season long props, if you're playing dynasty, everything flows through that. And so draft kit is, I think, too cheap in my opinion. It's $29.99 for the home league version, and then $49.99 to get the upgrade to all that other stuff. And so, it's I think well worth it. But I'm no salesman. I think that you guys should just try it and see for yourself. You're welcome to cancel it anytime.
I think that draft kit basically spells itself.
It was so bad. He was like, "Get it if you don't, whatever. Get your money back. Who cares? Just get one, whatever." That's so funny, dude.
Well, the one thing you can't deny, no matter how you look at it, is the over 5 million downloads to your podcast. I mean, it's done some pretty good things here. So if you're not familiar, and I don't know why you're watching this show and you've never caught Adam's podcast, I mean, I can't see 5 million downloads and 20,000 downloads kind of comparing one another here, but make sure you're checking that out. We've heard some of his solo stuff that he's talked about throughout the show, more of those life experience, a little bit of those fun, and some of those rants on there, they're absolute gold. They're worth the price of admission right there in themselves. You should include that with the draft kit and sell it. Make that a selling point.
Honestly, the podcast is free, and if people haven't checked out at all, like if you listen to the podcast, you'll get a good idea of what we do. And so, yeah, the podcast is totally free. You should definitely check that out. That's like the best entryway to what we do for sure.
And now, with that all being said, this has been Behind the Grind with Adam Levitan. Check us out next week. We're coming back. We got all kinds of content on the YouTube channel there, on the Vipers Network, on the website, everything. But I leave you with this. One last thing, Major. One last thing.
Here we go.
The milk isn't expired until the jug expands. We'll see you next week.